be talking about the Psalms that we sing. You guys can probably already, even before you opened and looked through this lesson, if you had time to do that, you probably already thought of some of the Psalms that we sing. Probably had some of your favorites. I know I have a couple of favorites just from growing up in the church, and I think Psalm 19 is, I think I've mentioned before, one of my favorite childhood memories of one of my guys I grew up with in church leading that. I can always picture Brother Richard Brand leading that. So probably have some favorites. We're going to start with Psalm 23. I know I'm pretty sure we've gone over this one. I can't imagine that we haven't. So a lot of these are going to be reviewed tonight. Psalm 23, who can quote Psalm 23?
That's the one I did in depth, that one Wednesday night.
Yeah, so we definitely did that one. Jonathan did a whole class on it. Probably most of us can picture what it's about. Who can give me a gist of Psalm 23?
Well, it's a poem in which the writer seems he's addressing God.
Yeah.
It's a poem of celebration of God's care of Him.
Yeah, exactly.
Through thick and thin, through days of darkness.
Right. Yeah, and in the beginning, it's mostly a lot about dark days, it seems like. So David's exactly right. David is the author of the psalm, and the Lord is my shepherd. That's pretty much the whole point. He says it right off the bat. It's a psalm about when he's basically under attack. We don't have a direct timing of this psalm about what was going on in David's life with this, but we can imagine plenty of times when he was being hunted or had a spear thrown at him or had to hide in a cave or act like a crazy man or whatever he had to do to stay alive. He was on the run. And so we'll start off and we'll read the first half, verses 1 through 4. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So certainly something that the people of Israel probably were very familiar with, at least to this imagery. A lot of them were shepherds. David himself was a shepherd. Anyone here been a shepherd before? Tim? You had any sheep?
Never had any sheep
Never.
or goats.
No sheep or goats. It's a shame.
Cows.
Just cows, yeah. Benny, you've had...
I've got a book at home that was written by a shepherd
Yeah.
that actually tended sheep, and he wrote a book on the 23rd Psalm.
Yeah.
And if you read that book, there's things that people that have never kept sheep have no idea what some of that's referring to.
Mhm.
And he brings all that out and explains about anointing the head with oil.
Right.
Keeps flies and things from annoying the sheep.
Right.
And he describes all about the care that most of us, well, like I say, if you've never done it, you wouldn't understand it.
Right. Yeah.
But it's a lot more to it than what we realize.
Yeah. I haven't been a shepherd myself. I was able to spend a summer in Wyoming and worked on a cattle farm, but we helped a sheep rancher work his sheep one time, and that was an experience. And I've got a buddy from that experience that actually runs his name's Nathan Smeltzer, if anybody knows the Smeltzer family. He runs a really pretty large, I don't know how he has time to do this, sheep operation in Pennsylvania. And so there's still people out there that do that. Occasionally we will get the odd lamb into the clinic. I'll tell you, I had one night and it had bloat, and I had to bring it, I don't know if I can say this on the internet, I had to bring it home. I don't know. It was for its care. But it was a lamb, and that was the sweetest creature I have ever come across. I mean, no doubt about it. And so it just immediately attached itself to me, like immediately. And
A
it,
little bit more meaning to Nathan's story to David.
right, yeah, exactly. Nathan's story to David, about the guy that had the sheep that he cared for and it ate at his table. But they just are really trusting creatures, and they really rely on someone to look out for them. And they just, immediately attach to somebody. And so that kind of brought that to life for me. But, David here is describing himself as the sheep. He's relying on God, and he's praising him for all the good things that he's led him through. He leads him to green pastures. I know I mentioned this in that class that Jonathan taught. I went to a talk one time that talked about, the green pastures. The green pastures in Israel are a lot different than what you would think of here in the South. They're mostly kind of sparse hillsides that they would be on, where they're not really all that green. So it's kind of interesting to think about that. But, provides water for him. Even when they go through scary areas, he protects him. Probably one of the most famous lines of this is walk through the valley of the shadow of death. The commentary said that most people think of this psalm, they immediately think of somebody who's about to die. That's when this psalm is kind of traditionally or most commonly thought of. But that's not the only time when this is used. You can use this at any time you go through trouble. It's a pretty broad thing that you could apply this to. So what? There's a bunch of songs that we sing that apply to this song. So number 292, "The Lord's My Shepherd." Number 328, "His sheep am I." Number 364, "The Lord my shepherd is." And then number 375, "The Lord's my shepherd, I'll not want." Does anybody have a favorite of those that they like? I do.
I think it's the last one.
Yeah, that's my favorite too. Number 375. I didn't get John to put these on the overhead, but we can turn to it. Yeah, that's my favorite too. And it basically, the first verse of this is basically right out of the psalm. If you turn to number 375, "The Lord's my shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me to lie down in pastures green. He leadeth me in pastures green. He leadeth me the quiet waters by." In verse 2, "My soul he doth restore again, and me to walk doth make within the paths of righteousness, e'en for his own name's sake." So that's right out of the psalm as well. Verse 3, "Yea, though I walk in death's dark vale, yet will I fear none ill, for thou art with me, and thy rod, for thou art with me, and thy rod and staff me comfort still." And then we'll go on to the second half of this psalm that he switches a little bit. Does anybody know what he talks about in the second half of the psalm? A little bit of a different metaphor.
Or is it?
Yeah.
It seems that he goes,
Yeah.
most commentators say he goes from shepherding imagery to hosting.
Yeah. But he could still be a shepherd. He could still be, taking care of.
That's the book that Benny was talking about. That's the idea that Philip Keller takes, is that it's continuing with the shepherding imagery.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's finish reading it. It's really short, so we can get through it. "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever." It does seem to switch a little bit. He switched from, the commentary said, I thought it was really funny, that where David goes from being an animal to a human. It's kind of obvious, but also kind of a little bit funny. He's just kind of switching scenes almost to where he points out another place where God takes care of him and just spreads out, this everything he needs for him. This almost like a banquet, I would think of. before in the presence of his enemies, he even does it. His cup overflows. That's in a couple of our songs as well. My cup overflows. Think about, we have all. He has all that he needs and more. Goodness and mercy follow me. I mean, you think about David saying that at this time. He's really being followed by terror and soldiers, but he says goodness and mercy follow him because he's finding pleasure in the Lord. He's finding, good things to dwell on. And then just finishing up verse 4 and 5 in number 375. My table thou hast furnished in presence of my foes. My head thou dost with an oil anoint. My head thou dost with oil anoint, and my cup overflows. Goodness and mercy all my life shall surely follow me, and in God's house forevermore, and in God's house forevermore, my dwelling place shall be. Kind of look into this to tie it to the New Testament, like we always like to do. Who can we help but think of? Who can't we help but think of when we think about a shepherd as New Testament Christians? Victor?
The Good Shepherd, Jesus Christ.
The Good Shepherd, yeah. Why can't we help but think of him?
Because he is.
He is, yeah. He says he is. He flat says it. And so he said in John 10, verse 11, I am the Good Shepherd. And what does the Good Shepherd do that he says in John 10? He lays down his life for his sheep, yeah. He's not just talking like a metaphor here. He's not saying, if a bear attacked, I'd jump right out in front and I'd fight him. He's more than willing to just place his life in danger. He actually went through with it. And so he does a little bit of foreshadowing here when he says the Good Shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. And he also, in John 10 and verse 14, he comforts his people by saying, I love this. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. So he knows exactly who they are. And if you think about kind of what I was talking about with that little lamb, he immediately attached to me. I don't think there's anything special about me. I like to think that, every veterinarian wants to think. Yeah, every veterinarian thinks that they're good with animals. Well, I've learned other than that. Poke them with needles a few times and stick a thermometer where they don't like it, and you'll find out they don't like it just because you're a veterinarian. So, but no, they certainly will. Any creature that you care for. Just put out some food for a stray cat a little bit. They'll attach to you, and they'll know who you are, and you'll know who they are. You'll be able to pick them out of a crowd. They won't. And you think about sheep too in a big flock, and these huge ranches or things that have these huge flocks of sheep, and then how the shepherd, even just looking among them, would be able to pick them out and know how they look different and how they act and what to expect from certain ones. That's amazing. To think that that Jesus has that interest in us and can really pays attention to us that much. That's amazing to think about that. So, any final thoughts on Psalm 23? All right. The next psalm, I'll admit, I did not know there was a song about this one. This is Psalm 51. I know we've covered this one, or we've talked about it. I think last week when I talked about David's life, there were two psalms that were related to when he sinned with Bathsheba and was confronted by Nathan, as we've already mentioned, and pointed out that God knew about his sin and the terrible things that he had done. And I think Psalm 32, that was the one that we covered in class. Psalm 51 is much longer, or not much longer, but it's a little bit longer. And it's him, confessing his sin asking for forgiveness, and that's the setting. So I'll just read the first couple of verses because that's where the song that we get from this comes from. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love. According to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. So verse 2 is really where we get the song. And the song, does anyone know the song? Jonathan knows it? It's in the book. It's in our study book. This is number 408. Number 408, if you want to turn to that one.
Yes, we've sung that.
We have? Okay. Cleanse me. I don't think it's not as well known as well, I can't, Lily of the Valley, or what's that Dicus hymn that Our God is Alive, or Amazing Grace, or anything like that. It's not quite as up there as those traditional songs, but apparently David knows it. Apparently a couple other people know it. Verse 2 of Psalm 51 is where this is drawn from. I'll read the first verse. Search me, O God, and know my heart today. Try me, O Savior. Know my thoughts, I pray. See if there be some wicked way in me. Cleanse me from every sin and set me free. That's great. I love that. And I can certainly picture singing that and thinking, I've kind of joked before. I think I did a giving talk about a song that we sang that said we were going to give over all of our earthly treasure. Sometimes we're singing along and we don't really know. We're more focused on the tune than the words, and we think, man, did I really just sing that? If you really think about the words. But this is something that you can really think about the words and think, man, especially that first verse, you want God to search your heart. And that's something that we hear from David a lot, especially when we talked about David with the law and thinking about how much he loved the law. And obviously with this situation where he had sinned so flagrantly and done something that was so obviously against God and his law. But in other parts, David asks God to let him know more about the law so that he can know when he's wrong. Like, he wants to know every dot and tittle. Is that right? Is that what? Jot and tittle, yeah. He wants to know every minute detail so that he can keep it. And if he's not aware of it, then he wants God to make him aware of it so that he can make sure that he doesn't violate that. Certainly a great task with the old law to keep up with all that, and to think of David wanting to do that in some other Psalms where he asked God to do that for him, where he would know more and to cleanse his heart. Verse 2, I praise thee, Lord, for cleansing me from sin. Fulfill thy word and make me pure within. Fill me with fire where once I burned with shame. Grant me desire to magnify thy name. In verse 3, Lord, take my life and make it wholly thine. Fill my poor heart with thy great love divine. Take all my will, my passion, self, and pride. I now surrender, Lord, in me abide. So he's really asking him to just empty himself of all the bad things and the selfishness and things that are filling him up, and to take that empty space and fill it up with God. I think that we could easily sing this and be hopefully sincere about that, and almost like a prayer and a song. O Lord above, revival comes from thee. Send a revival, start the work in me. Thy word declares thou wilt supply our need. For blessing now, O Lord, I humbly plead. So that hopefully we can sing that sometime soon. I'm not going to do that tonight, but I'm not going to make you guys go through that. But next time we get to number 408, just remember that it comes from Psalm 51, verse 2, and you can kind of remember the setting, and you can hopefully focus on the words a little bit more, and think about what we're asking of God when we sing that, to forgive our sins, and not just to forgive our sins, but to know more about when we sin and to know more about how we can please Him better and be more like Him. Yeah.
It's an oversight on my part that it should have also had Psalm 139 in this passage. Psalm 139 opens with that phrase, "O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down, when I rise up, you discern my thoughts from afar." This is the same psalm that he says, "Where can I go from your spirit?" Basically, I can't hide from you.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says, "You formed." That is the same psalm. He says, "You formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." And then he ends the psalm again by saying, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting."
Yeah, is that the same psalm that says, "When I go to the depths, you are there"? Okay, you can't escape God. It's almost like he's saying, "I can't get away from you, so why don't you just tell me what I'm supposed to be doing?" But he says it in a much more poetic way, much more beautiful way. Has anyone ever prayed? I don't think I've ever prayed for God to search my heart and to find things that are wrong with me. Would anyone be willing to confess that they've prayed that before? I mean, that's a bold prayer.
I prayed a prayer similar to it.
Okay.
I had a decision that I needed to make.
Yeah.
And it got in my own mind that I might be making this decision for the wrong reasons.
Okay.
And so not in the, flay me open and lay me out kind of,
Right.
Search me, but, help me to make sure that I'm making these right decisions.
Yeah.
For the right reason and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's a bold prayer because usually we only show what we want others to see.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
And just to, ask God to look is a scary.
Put me under a microscope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that that's asking for it. I don't. Benny.
Well, I'll pray sometimes sort of along that line. Sometimes I'll mention in the prayer that if there's anything in my life that's not right and I'm not aware of it,
Yeah.
please bring it to my attention.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes we'll say the line in a public prayer, "Forgive us of sins of commission and omission." Maybe something like that, where we don't know that we've sinned. So that is something that is traditionally said.
My favorite prayer is, "Please forgive us of all of our unforgiven sins." I'm trying to think, what other sins would you be
Yeah.
forgiven for? The unforgiven ones.
Right. So just anyone that I might have. Yeah.
David, my favorite prayer is the closing prayer that says, "Forgive us of all those many sins that we committed since the last time we approached you."
Yeah, how
Yeah.
about that?
Closing prayer. What were you sinners doing in the sermon?
Yeah. You never know.
You don't know what we're thinking of.
Right. With smartphones these days, I mean, turn your phone off during the service. Yeah. But no, I can commiserate with Jonathan a little bit. I've had decisions to make, major decisions to make, where you want to make a decision where it's not clear, and you want to make a decision where some of your consideration might be where you can be most useful in the kingdom. I think that's a thing that I've wanted to know about before. What would be best for, I've had to make decisions as a husband, or as a father that, were not clear, or major decisions that, you kind of want to know, okay, what would be best for my wife and my family, to make sure that they can continue to serve you, to serve God, or to be servants in the kingdom. But I don't think I've ever asked God to, just dig down and root out all of anything that He can think of, that would be wrong with me. I think my natural inclination is to start thinking about what's right with me and to start defending that, Most of us would do that. If we do want to use David as an example as someone that is like his heart, like God's own heart, this is a good example for us to maybe grow closer to God. Thinking about how this relates to Jesus, this prayer, this serves as a reminder that we need restoration. Our restoration depends on God's grace. This psalm certainly mentions God's mercy, and that God responds not to mere ritual sacrifice, but what he really wants is repentance, a broken and contrite heart. I think David more than exemplifies that throughout Psalm 51 and Psalm 32, that he's sorry for what he's done. And Christians can also read this and think about our forgiveness, given from Jesus' sacrificial death and his resurrection. So, all right, we'll move on to the next one. Psalm 27. Psalm 27. There's actually only one verse that we're going to use from that. Psalm 27, verse 11. I know I'm fairly certain we've gone over this one as well. Psalm 27, verse 11 says, "Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me on a level path because of my enemies." And the song that we're going to sing we're going to look at, is number 112, "Teach Me Thy Way." I do know this song. Familiar with this song? Everybody familiar with 112? Yeah. So we'll read a couple of those verses. "Teach me thy way, O Lord, teach me thy way, thy guiding grace afford. Teach me thy way, help me to walk aright, more by faith, less by sight. Lead me with heavenly light, teach me thy way." Kind of interesting line that stands out to me, more by faith and less by sight. We were on the way to church tonight, and I don't know where this came. You never know what kids are going to ask. James said, "I don't believe in heaven because I can't see it." Where'd that come from? we were just on our way to church. And so that was a heavy subject, and Karen just tosses it to me. "What do you think about that, Dad?" Not that she doesn't have anything to say. Believe me, Karen has an opinion or something ready to say. She's ready to tell her boys good things all the time. So, but my first question to James was, "Well, do you believe in the wind?" You can't see it. And we asked him, "Do you believe in gravity?" I think they'd been talking about gravity or something. And so this line, more by faith and less by sight, and I thought about telling him, what's faith? What's faith defined as in Hebrews? The substance of things hoped for, things unseen, things not seen. Yeah. And so, that's a bold prayer too, especially as human beings, as tangible. We want something to believe in, and we're going to struggle with that our whole life. We're going to continually have to check ourselves and ask God to increase our faith and make us rely on Him. We can't see Him. I don't know anyone here that's ever seen Him. And so, that's a prayer that we can certainly pray, and when we sing this song that we can hopefully focus in on.